All right, I'm starting. 4 p.m. We're starting on time around here. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the fall 2018 first Senate session. A special welcome to two of our senators who literally got elected last night. I'm very pleased. We still don't have a full House. We are still 4 senators down, but we are working to resolve that as quickly as we can. So our first agenda item is the approval of the minutes. Did anyone have any notes on the minutes from June 4th?
The only thing that I noticed is the committee on committee was not included in the report.
What's that?
The committee on committee report was
not in there?
minutes.
Okay. So it should be, in that case, should be emailed around.
And I have, and she said to look it up.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move we approve the minutes from June 4th with the edits that Marianne references.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Keep your hands up. Okay. Any opposed? No, that was everyone, right? Do I? Okay. Any opposed? Any abstains? Oh yeah, you missed.
I'm abstention, I guess.
Okay.
I'm sitting in for Deb, but I think Deb would approve them. I know nothing about the
I
minutes.
think most people abstain if they weren't here.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I don't know what the Robert's Rules of Order say in regard.
This is good. All right.
Abstain.
All right.
The camera's off, right?
We got that all on tape.
All right. So President Linda Shutt, do you have a report for us today?
I do. Welcome, everybody. First of all, I thought I'd talk just a minute about enrollment. The picture has not gotten a lot better since the breakfast. Right now, we are down a little over 5% in FTE. That's pretty significant. That's from last year. Now, last year was up about 2% from the previous year, so that means we're still down from the year before that. That number will get a little bit better as the Advanced Southern Credit roll in there, but this is our students here on campus. And the number of first-year students overall are down. So we're still processing what all of this is going to mean. I want you to know we're taking it seriously. We're trying to react have a measured response. We want to continue investing where wise, but we're probably going to have some savings somewhere. So nothing will be done in secret. We'll, let you know as we're rolling. There are no cuts, right? Nothing like that. We need time to figure all of this out. There will be, you'll probably be asked to try to conserve on your use of supplies, although that's a little tiny part. Anyway, just know that we're thinking it through. We do have a fund balance that exceeded projections this last year, so we're a little over 11%. If we absorb this whole enrollment loss in that fund balance, it takes us down to about 8 to 8.5%, and the board likes us to be at 10 or more. So that is what I have to negotiate with them. And part of it depends on what we're projecting for next year, because if we see an uptick, then this is just a blip, but if we don't, that's when we begin to get really worried. But we're working really hard to make sure that we're fully staffed in admissions. We're thinking already hard about next fall and even the fall after that. One of the things I'm considering doing this fall is some kind of a summit for the whole campus on how we recruit and market, because whenever we have a downturn, people come to me with a lot of ideas. And it would, I think if we all had the same sort of base of knowledge about what we're already doing, then you can more accurately build on that with good ideas. So if that sounds like I'm seeing some heads nod, because it's a specialized process, and we do a lot that you probably never see. So anyway, we're minding the store on that. The great news is that degree completions were up significantly. So bachelor's degrees from this last year, conferral was up 6.7%, and master's degrees 2.6%. That means we kept students and we got them graduated. Unfortunately, when you graduate a big class and you don't bring a big class in, you have an enrollment decline. But we do get extra funding based on completions, so that should help a little bit. We have to have time to factor all that in too. So let's see, what else? I wanted to just let you know, Sue's going to talk a little bit because she's chairing the search for the Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs. Clearly a position we're eager to have and lend their expertise to what we do here. I'm talk a little bit about the search for the Chief Diversity Officer. That search is being co-chaired by Sabrina Prudhomme and Almorosa Alvarez. We're putting together the people on that committee. And we're going to have a pretty aggressive timeline. We're going to try to get through that search before the holiday and try to get somebody on board as soon as possible. We had a board retreat last Thursday evening and Friday. We welcomed our new faculty and staff and student, well, he's not new, faculty and staff trustees to the board. And the big topics for the retreat were first, equity, diversity, and inclusion, so that we really kind of took the board through some pretty introductory information around these topics, but to make sure everybody has a baseline. We talked about an equity lens that the HEC uses, the state uses, and we use, and we want them to kind of think through these same categories as they make decisions. And it was a really good discussion, I think. And then the other thing we spent a lot of time on was town-gown relationships. Some of you know, I read this book, the cabinet's read it, the board's now read it, called The Optimal Town-Gown Marriage. So the board has said, yes, let's go ahead, let's work on this. It's now on me to sort of plan out what this work will look like. And we're talking a 2, 3, 4 year process here. It's not something that's going to get done immediately. But stay tuned. I think that there will be places where faculty may, if they wish, get really involved in this. And I just want to conclude by saying it's not just SOU reaching out. We're going to engage like the mayor, the city council, community organizations, so that we can identify areas of mutual concern and mutual benefit. I think that will be key to the success of this. So stay tuned on that one too.
Linda, I wonder if you could say a word about the peace plan and how important that might be or not be, and if that can be used for recruiting. Not that we want to use everything just for that, but it seems like a big deal from what I've read.
Well, it was a fortuitous, sort of serendipitous occasion that everything came together on that one. I think it's really cool that our university is the first in the world to have this peace plan. Having said that, I don't know that it's going to translate into recruitment of any substantial means. I did have one first-year student come up to me and say, hey, I went to that. I thought that was really cool. I think partly it depends on what we do with it now. And so there's talk about an annual conference around this. I don't know where we'll go. For now, it's burning away down there, and we got some good publicity out of it. Yes, eternally and sustainably burning away down at the farm.
Andrew, we have time for one more question. So I know you guys are still cranking your way through this, but I'm kind of curious. anything kind of unusual or weird that you saw as you're going through this look at the deposits versus actually enrolled kind of ratio?
Yeah.
That just was kind of out of the ordinary relative to some of our past years?
Part of, we're down in Californians,
Okay.
although it seems like every other student I talk to is from
Yeah.
California. But that number has declined, and we think that was because we were shy a recruiter or two down there for a period of time last year. So we're trying to be very careful about making sure that we're fully staffed and retain those staff. The other thing that was unusual and surprising is a lot of deposits that did not end up enrolling.
Right.
And that is probably students hedging their bets about where they think they're going to get in, our sort of status as a safe school. You know, maybe if other universities were seeing that they were going to be down, they may have admitted students that they wouldn't have otherwise admitted. And so a student who had deposited here and at U of O or, Berkeley, then decided to go those places once they got in, as opposed to here.
No conversation around the state-aided public institutions to see if they saw the same sort of.
We're trying.
We're trying to
Everybody's
get some
holding their
information.
cards
Yeah.
very close.
Every vice president is asking and provost, yeah, but so far, no. Registrars are talking, but that's the one thing they won't talk about.
I will say for those of you who are politically active, we're already starting to talk about the next legislative session, which next spring. The word on the street is that the governor's recommended budget will recommend about an additional $40 million for the Public University Support Fund. The Council of Presidents says we need at least $130 million to stay even. So there's a big gap there. That's a lot of lobbying to be done, a lot of working with various legislators to help them understand what continues to drive costs up. So that'll be much of my work and other people's work over the next few months.
Thanks.
Oh,
I was just, everything I'm reading across the nation, it seems to be a trend. Just saw another thing, that, MBA programs are down, all these different trends. Is that something you're recognizing, seeing? maybe
Well, our MBA program is,
it?
it's up about 300%.
That's awesome. But have been tremendous growth in the job sector, and that's pretty traditional. When you have that kind of growth, people leave universities and go into that. I think that's probably what's going on now. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that. And how do you combat against that? And then, do we really think we can always continuously sustain growth?
No, I don't think
Yeah.
we can. But my first goal for the board this year, and it's a goal that'll probably take more than a year, but is really leading a campus conversation about what is sustainable for SOU, what size is that. But to do that, we need to really look at all the demographic trends and feel like we have a good, solid understanding what's going to happen over the next 10, 15, even 20 years. We also need to understand economic growth in our service region. Where do we need to help with that, in case there are programs that we should be offering that could draw students that we aren't offering. And other conversations just about, I don't think we should beat ourselves up every year if we're not going to continually grow by 3% or 5%. What do we need to be? But we don't really have that answer yet. So I hope to really probably have some professional learning communities again, like we did when we were doing the strategic plan around some of these topics, and see what kind of good thinking we can do together as a campus. They're good questions. They're very difficult questions. Sorry, I know I took too long, but they kept asking questions.
We did. I've made a note to punch Chadwick.
there will be.
No cookies for you next.
So I'll say one quick thing about the vice president search. We have elected to go with a search firm for this search round. recall that we did not do that last time. We are now on top of it, ahead of it. We've hired Summit Search Solutions. Sonia Andrews will be our consultant. She used to be the provost at Portland State. I worked with her for a number of years, and she retired and went to work for this firm. They're giving us sort of a Cadillac suite of services for much less than what we would normally pay. So we appreciate the fact that they feel a sort of soft spot for Southern, because we were all part of the same, all the sandbox together, and so we're happy that she's taken such an interest. And she was here on Wednesday, met with the search committee and all sorts of other folks, and I think everybody just really appreciated what she brought to the table. So we're launching, and like in the next couple of days, we'll have candidates on campus probably.
Not in the next couple of days.
We're actually launching October 4th.
Right, but
Yeah.
we won't have candidates.
Oh, no, sorry. Oh. Just jumped right into that. On the week of November 26th, so hopefully before the holidays and we get busy and away. So very, very happy that she'll be working with our institution.
I just want to
Yeah.
acknowledge for
Yeah.
both these searches, we know there are going to be candidates on campus at times that are not optimal for you. We apologize for that. It's balancing when we can get these people in with the need to have them here yesterday. So, sorry that that's going to be the timing. We hope you'll be able to find time to participate and help us pick the best candidates in spite of that.
Yeah. So the other couple of things I wanted to mention, to the president's point, I have scheduled a meeting with an economist, Guy Tower, who works for the Economic Development Department and really knows Southern Oregon, and will be meeting with the academic division directors and Max Brooks and some others in the next week or so to talk about what you just mentioned and what Chad was asking about as well. A couple of other quick things. I mentioned at the breakfast that I had the division directors read Becoming a Student-Ready College over the summer. Some of you also read it who were sitting on some other meetings that happened over the summer, so thank you for that. And I really feel that that's the model that is important for us to embrace. We've done the college transition collaborative work with the belonging literature that Dan's been working on for a couple of years. We just emerged from the reimagining the first year work with ASCU. We're working on high impact practices. Paul and two of his colleagues presented at ASCU over the summer on high impact practices as a result of a grant from the Gates Foundation and ASCU. So we're doing a lot of really good work that just dovetails into this whole idea of becoming a student-ready college. So I encourage you to read the book. There's a lot of opportunity for us to do what we do with students in a way that makes them feel like they belong here and are welcomed here. So we're going to be asking folks to look at a lot of the communication, our probation letters, our bounce back messages when we're not here in the summer, and how that might be communicating something different than what we want to communicate. So all of those things are going to be part of the conversation, and people will be invited to participate. The chairs and directors met over the summer, 4 hours on 2 different days. That was, I think, some good work, and a lot of professional development happened during that time. And I guess the last thing I would just say is I'm really looking forward to a good year because we have strategic direction 1 to embrace, and Andrew's going to talk more about that at some point on the agenda. There is a lot to talk about, but I know he's got a few things scheduled for today, so I'll just stop there.
Thank you. Alexis could not make it, but she sent me a letter, and I told her I would read it real quickly. ASSOU is currently working on voter education for the special election we're currently holding to remove the $13 Schneider Children's Center fee. This election will be running until October 10th and is available for students to access with Qualtrics through their student emails. In addition to that, we're running our usual voter registration drive with the Oregon Student Association, and this year are teaming up with Osberg to get students registered to vote. We have a few open seats in our Student Senate and are hoping to have those filled next Tuesday so we can have the Student Fee Committee and its subcommittees as soon as possible. And she said if you have any questions, you can email me and I can pass them along. All right, so Mary Ann.
Okay, so my first role as vice chair, I'll say welcome, everybody. We need someone on the advisory council. So if anybody is interested in joining us, we are down one person, and so we encourage you to volunteer now if you want.
Marianne, is that just for this term though, right?
Yes.
Not for the whole year. It could be for the year,
He's
right?
supposed to, he's supposed to come back next term.
Yeah, so the senator who volunteered for the advisory council is gone for one term, is coming back, so in that case, would he still come back to advisory council as well?
Who is it?
Mark Koya?
Oh, I'm not sure about that, but we can certainly answer that question.
Let us know, Andrew.
Okay. And Jason Katz, who's our lawyer, for lack of a more precise word, is seeking a faculty representative for the policy council. So if you're interested in that, you can reach him directly, or you can let Andrew know, and he will let him, he will give him the names of people interested. As you might remember, we eliminated the FPAP. We now just have one document instead of two, and we need to actually take further action on that. It's the bylaws 5.340 that need to be revised, and the Constitution Committee is aware of that. But that is one thing that we discussed in the meeting last Monday that is not on the agenda for today. So just know that that is going to be worked on.
To clarify, in 2016, Senate voted to charge the committee with that work, and somehow between the years it just disappeared and never got back to that committee. So it's something the Senate has already approved for the committee to do, so the committee is working on that language. We'll bring it back for us to vote on.
Any questions for that person? Not the other person. Committee on Committees, the most annoying person on campus. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you say those bylaws, 5.3.0?
5.340.
Thank you.
Okay, so so I'm responsible for some of the committees, the ones that aren't just whose members are not just Senate members. I just had to get that clarification from Larry. And so a lot of them are filled, and that's awesome. But some of them are more restrictive in who they need to have on board. And so the one that is so much in need of a DHL and an OCA member are the university studies. There are 8 members total, and right now we don't have those 2 divisions represented, and it's a very important committee, and it has to have representation from all the divisions. So if you or someone you know would be interested, please encourage them to join. The chair is Dale Vidmar, so if anything happens, please make sure that you write me and Dale, and that way we know what's going on. And just more generally, we need better communication. When somebody leaves a committee or somebody joins a committee, often it only gets communicated to the chair, and then it doesn't come to me, and so then I request someone and I get a message saying, oh, but I'm already on it, or no, I didn't mean to actually be on it, I was just showing interest, or whatever. So please just have everybody communicate with me, and actually with Precious and Paul. The committee is now no longer just one person, so I should take advantage of that, as should you. Then the financial aids, the good old financial aids committee that we were trying to reduce to 8 people if possible. Nothing happened with that, so it's still a 12-member committee, but we need 3 more people on that. And so Jane Picknell is the person to contact, as well as the 3 of us, or at least me. I can disseminate that. That's it. Otherwise, our committees are full until I get further messages saying, I'm not on that committee. Thank you.
All right. Perfectly on time. So we have a while to discuss a few different bylaws issues that have come up. Basically, from about 30 minutes after I received this chair in June till now, I've received lots of different emails from faculty with various concerns, and so we discussed all of these at advisory council, and we think they're all worth general Senate discussion. So I'm just going to kind of go through these one at a time here. The first issue that came up for us, as we've already mentioned, we're a few senators down. We had a number of senators going on sabbatical or having to step down for teaching obligations. And as we began the process of looking at running special elections, we realized that in the last couple of years, there's been sort of a somewhat inconsistent application of the various bylaws. So for instance, there are a number of instances where someone on sabbatical has basically asked someone, will you be my sub for a term? And they've done that, and it's been sort of the way it's been done, but that's not consistent with the bylaws. The bylaws currently require a special election for even a one-term replacement. And then in the process of running some of these special elections, we found that there's quite a bit of confusion as to exactly what's required in the bylaws. There's some cases where the bylaws sort of point to another bylaw and the other one points back, and we're not really sure what's happening. Divisions are running elections in very different ways. So for instance, in one case, the divisions were sort of expecting the elections committee to run the election through Qualtrics for them. In another case, the division had the practice of having individual departments at their departmental faculty meetings just pick someone and send them up without any division-wide election happening. And in some cases, division directors would make a call for someone to step forward, and if only one person did, they were just sent to Senate, and there was never an election at all. So we basically, one, want to make sure the bylaws are followed consistently, and two, in some of these cases where the bylaws are a little confusing or burdensome, consider maybe the possibility of some revision. In particular, we were wondering, having this gone through this process of trying to run multiple 6 special elections at once in the first week of classes, wondering if perhaps there should be a little more latitude for a one-term replacement instead of having to run a special election every time someone is gone for just one term. So those are sort of the issues. Anything you want to add to that?
I think is that most of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the elections committee, we've kind of been emailing back and forth. I think the consensus within the committee was that we'd sort of like to recommend that you don't have special elections for a one-term temporary replacement. Sometimes we don't even know about those things till the beginning of the term. By the time you've put the whole process together and run the election, it's halfway through the term or later. So, you know, the idea that what has in fact been the practice, which is usually somebody who's going to be gone for a term, asks somebody else to step in for them. We think we should probably make that the bylaw rather than ignore the bylaw as it is. And the other thing was on the elections, right now it says the division representatives are elected by the division, by a division election. But as Andrew's mentioned, that's not been applied consistently. So I think our second recommendation was that actually we do have the Senate Elections Committee run the division elections, so that way we can make sure it's an equitable process and apply equitably across all divisions when we do that. For those, I think that was the recommendation.
Any discussion about any of these?
Well, probably the provost's office would have notification of which faculty would be on which term, if they're just going by a term. It's like, we don't know as a body, but maybe we can get a notification in a more formal way like that, or a regular way.
Well, we keep, we sort of, after you all report what's going on, we make any adjustments or changes.
Like when they apply, you know, when they apply and they get awarded for their sabbatical,
Yeah.
like winter quarter,
People
next
change their
2019.
sabbaticals and I don't hear about it
No,
until,
okay.
you know, if 3 other people have signed off on it. And I just don't know if we would be that helpful.
Yeah, okay.
Well, certainly the division chairs, directors should know by spring break, who's not going to be there since they would have to fill classes with someone else. So maybe they're the people who could contact the elections committee and let them know who will not be on Senate that term.
But some of the one-termers weren't because of sabbatical.
Right.
Like Prakash is interim honors college director, and that was kind of a later development. And Mark had the course conflict, so it's not always sabbatical anyway.
In our area, so music can decide who would be this Senate representative because we know each other really well, where the entire OCA is voting on that. Art and theater don't know the faculty in music who might want to be involved in that. So it seems that doing it internally in our small program, we get the right person, and you know, it's very agreeable because everybody's there. We can say, okay, we're voting for that person. Whereas if we include everybody in the OCA to vote on that, they might not have the same intimate knowledge of, oh, this person really wants to do it, and these 5 have already done it. So I kind of like the idea of keeping the vote intimate into our program rather than the whole entire OCA.
One of the issues is, well, there's two things, of course, is that by the bylaws, there are not program senators, there are division senators. And the second issue is, of course, that even if within a division they were sort of doing that as a practical matter, some divisions don't have just 3 programs. So you have 3 senators, but what if there's 4 programs in the division? So one program might not have any representation at all, while 3 would. So there's some things to think about too on that.
It seems to me that the 2 issues, the first that Dominic said that the bylaws require an election for an interim. I agree with you that it seems like going by the word of the bylaw is a solution looking for a problem. That's been fine, handled as is, so perhaps we should modify the bylaw in that case. But I think, Andrew, the requiring a little bit more formal process for the divisions makes sense. Our division is one that has, how many programs are in our division? 148, I think, left. So I think that it probably does make sense to have a little bit broader process for new senators. But for those interims, I think if it's been working fine so far, we should maybe just adjust our rules to fit a practice that doesn't seem to be proper.
So if we had these division elections, it wouldn't be that everybody in the division was up to be voted on. We would nominate some people, so your individual department could still nominate someone to go, and there could be, you know, then just a couple. So maybe then it wouldn't be quite as, you know, they don't know who they're voting on because there's like one person from each of your 3 areas coming kind of up the line to that vote. So you still get a kind of personal vote before that, maybe.
Yeah, we're not having a lot of problems with you know, very, very competitive elections. So, you know, we just begged STEM for 3 senators and we only got 2 volunteers, so STEM currently does not have a 3rd senator. So yeah, that's a good point, is that the nominations could certainly sort of have an informal, like each program is nominating.
It seems like, yeah, we're having trouble just filling positions. So eliminating all the barriers, I mean, I would say first and foremost, we have representation. Better have anyone in that seat than not having it filled. So anything we can do to eliminate those barriers would be advantageous. Some of the things I just, you know, someone, when I came in new, I was like, well, what are these positions all about? What am I getting into? So if we were to have perhaps a place, I'm the webmaster now, I could maybe post those on there and give some idea like what this commitment is. Maybe we could also do elections, you know, for the next person coming up. So I mean, maybe like we're already doing elections a year out to replace the next person. Does that make sense? So we're just, I mean, so this person already knows, they can start getting an idea that, okay, when such and such person's gone, I'm going to be the next person to take over, and they can start putting this in their schedule and things like that. So just kind of like an advanced election, so they can be ready to jump in place.
So senator-elects.
Yeah, senator-elects.
And so their classes would be scheduled.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know, make these commitments, and I know, I mean, all of a sudden, hey, you want to be on grad council? I'm like, well, all right, let me check this out, go to here, and like, well, it just happens I can do this, and I can, schedule around this, but, if I knew this a little bit beforehand, we're making schedules now for next year, and, I don't know if I could do half these positions, so.
Well, I would argue that that would be a really great system also for all committees, because people will sign up for something and then the hours of the meetings don't work.
Yeah. There could be a mentorship period too. So I'm the elect. This worked really good with Larry and I. Larry came in and was showing me how to do the webmaster details, and so I feel like I'm ready to go. So there was kind of a mentoring process.
My understanding of how this works is that the Senate would have to vote to charge the elections committee to make a change, but since we would need the 2-week rule, so I guess my recommendation would be to go to your faculty that you represent and bring up these issues and get their feedback and get their perspective on this, and we can come back and talk about it in 2 weeks. Sounds like there's some good ideas. All right. Next.
One quick question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Andrew. I'm wondering if we should have a proposal to vote on in 2 weeks' time so that people can review that before, or we're not really ready to even say what would be in that proposal. So, because that makes me think that if we have this discussion in 2 weeks' time, we may then end up saying, okay, this is what we want to propose.
Right.
I'm not sure we'll be able to vote on it.
So I think the way I understand it, but I'm new here, is that what I was thinking in my head is that we would charge the Constitution Committee to confer with the Elections Committee on coming up with a proposal that they would then bring back to us,
Right.
that we could then vote on or amend as such. So I think I just want to get to the point at least that you all are talking to each other and starting to develop a solution.
But have that for the next meeting.
Well, my understanding is that there has to be a vote to tell them to do that, and since it's a new thing, we have to wait 2 weeks for that vote, unless we wanted to waive the 2-week rule. But I think it might be worth, given that we're talking about shaking up elections and everything, I think it's worth going back to our divisions and bring that up. Seem good? Okay. Next one was brought up. I think it was. Sherry brought this up to me, and it's just sort of a cleanup thing. Let me pull this up here. The terminal degree language in 5.232, well, actually 5.231 and 232, and yeah, in 5.231, it says at Southern Oregon University, the appropriate terminal degree in the following fields, programs, and curricula is a doctorate, and then lists a bunch of programs. And then 5.232, it says, in the following areas, the doctorate is not normally required: art, design and studio art, creative writing, journalism, library and information science, radio, television, theater arts, and theater technology. And then there are a list of alphabetical bullets that give some more detail. And on E, which is in education and programs with significant teacher preparation missions, the appropriate terminal degree requirement is normally satisfied by a doctorate in these programs. The terminal degree may be waived for the applicant, and then gives reasons. And it was brought up because in a search, they were using that E to waive the requirement for someone. But they noted that in 5.232, before the bullets, education wasn't among the ones where an exception might happen. So it was just sort of a disagreement within the same area. But also just kind of noting that there's some other programs that might qualify there. So for instance, EMDA isn't in there. That might be relevant. So just kind of an update and cleaning up matter. Any thoughts or feedback?
In the education protocol in there, as we clean it up, and who, I don't know which committee is charged with doing the cleanup language, I would like to be involved in that conversation or be consulted, because there are other regulatory requirements from the state in teacher licensure that are sometimes at odds with the university's hopes and dreams. So making sure that our language is clear enough that we can meet our state mandates for licensure and the university mandates for terminal degree or equivalent. So I'd like to be in that conversation with Lisa.
They want to understand the issues. I don't know if I can explain it well. Okay.
I kind of wonder who makes that decision, what body would discuss this and agree that all of a sudden a program that wasn't included gets included? Who, at what level does that happen?
Well, I think it just needs to be clear, because I'm familiar with this, because it came out during an offer that the director was making when we were trying to align the offer with the bylaws, and it was a little clunky. So I think that this first place is to clean it up and remove the inconsistencies. And then the disciplinary areas can look at it. And then if it's inconsistent with the expectations of that disciplinary area, then that recommendation could be made. So if Jesse came across something, or if others did, it's not that many places, but it happened to be in this particular case a problem.
Right. Just want to make sure I'm following protocol. What I've done in the past 3 years, is write up a proposal, bringing that to Senate, saying, shall we eliminate the duplicate is in the sentence? And so we discuss that, and then we vote on that. And then other times when it's a little larger question, same process, and the proposals are sent and published ahead of time, and certainly discussed here, and then we wait for 2 weeks after the discussion, so that I don't know who, divisional directors, APSU, people can see what we're driving at, and then they can come and speak to that, and then we change it again because they see something that we didn't see, and then so it's a long process, or seems long, but everyone, I think, does have a chance to see it in writing, and ponder it. Is that what you understand that to be, Sue?
Yeah, I think in this case, it probably won't be quite as long, because there are just a few programs. Everything is almost all PhD.
Yeah.
So there are a few exceptions, and it's just making that consistent, because it's confusing. When you look at this section, it's like, oh, but that's different. And I don't think it's gonna, timely doesn't matter here, because we're not gonna be making an offer. It just so happened that we went out to search for an education person for someone who retired, and that's kind of what happened.
So the programs that are concerned know who they are, and they're ready to have this discussion, or they need to be told to start to have that discussion?
I think when Lori brings proposed language forward, you will see kind of where the need to weigh in will be. And I don't think it's going to be a very in-depth conversation, or a long conversation. Because the disciplinary areas are what they are. I mean, if you, in EMDA, it might be an MFA, or, so that's kind of what the confusion is.
So do you think there'd be value in having senators go back to their areas and do a gut check?
Take a look at this section, yeah.
Is our terminal degree represented correctly?
Does what this paragraph say match what that paragraph says, and is that consistent with the disciplinary requirement? Yeah, I think that would be easy to do.
Is everybody comfortable with that task as well, taking that back to your division? Okay, good.
Which is following up on Mary Ann's comment. So when you go back to a division or a department or a program, and they say, well, currently we're listed at terminal being a PhD, but it's too hard, we want to change it. Can we?
Mark,
No, it's a serious question. I mean, in business, prior to some, I don't know, I've been here a long time, there used to be a time where an MBA in experience was terminal. And then we changed it so it's not, which makes it really hard
Well,
to find people.
yeah, so
So can we change it back?
you know, the expectations in the bylaws are, you know, very clear for each program. So if you go to business, it's very clear that accounting doesn't require a terminal degree, but it does, I mean, I don't think so. I think it's.
No, no, we don't treat them differently.
Right. So I would, you know, I would not say yes to that. I would not be open to just programs deciding that this is too hard and so therefore we're only going to require this. I mean, for me, it's the integrity of the program. And so it's a conversation that you should have, but it has to match whatever sort of the national standards are for your disciplinary area. So it's always been the case that journalism does not require a PhD. And I think that there are reasons for that, and they're discipline specific. So I would hope that that conversation would not be a result of this conversation.
Okay.
And there is, just to clarify, in 5.233, there's a procedure by which exceptions can be made in particular
Yes, there are.
circumstances.
Special circumstances.
Any other thoughts on that? All right, I'm going to move on to one near and dear to my heart. So in the Constitution, in 0.531, under officers, it says the Senate shall elect from its membership a chair elect, and a secretary. And then in the bylaws, 1.311, it says the advisory council consists of the Senate chair, vice chair, secretary, immediate past chair, on and on. That's the only area where in the bylaws it specifies a vice chair. And so when I was reading through these, I started asking around, and that there was a time when there was always a chair-elect, and that person became the chair, because someone thought it was a good idea for someone to be on advisory council before becoming the chair. And at some point that just stopped, and my understanding is it had something to do with a time when, I think Jody admitted this, that someone would only be the chair-elect if they promised that they wouldn't have to be chair. And that basically broke the tradition. Ever since then, there's been a vice chair, and the vice chair has not become chair. And so I think that at least these two things should be consistent between the Constitution and the bylaws. But also, I think it's a really good idea for someone to have had time on advisory council before being the chair. Because, you know, we learn a lot. So, any discussion on that item?
So are you, sorry. So are you saying, are you proposing we reinstitute vice chair, or are you, what is?
The chair-elect, yeah.
Chair-elect. Would you like to see the vice chair eliminated from that bylaw?
And just be called a chair-elect.
Chair-elect.
And just apply that consistently is what I would.
Okay.
As of next year.
As of next year. Marion does not want to change the title. Yes.
I'd just like to add, I mean, I think it makes so much sense to have somebody who's been waiting, you know, to be able to take over the next year and be able to spend that year preparing to do that. So I really like the idea of the chair.
Yeah, we do that on MAPSU, and it's so crucial.
It's pretty common practice.
When Deborah contacted me and told me that I'd been nominated, I said, no, but I'll be the vice chair because I want to learn first. And then she wrote back saying, well, no one else will do it. So, so yeah, I think there's a good idea of having someone who's already, you know, waiting, for sure. So I don't know, again, what the next step of action would be on that. If anyone wants to discuss it for your divisions, but I would like to get to a place where we could just vote to do that.
I think it's a great idea, and in my defense, if I need a defense, I wouldn't be sitting here if that had already happened, because with my other duties, I would end up not teaching. And that's the reason I'm here, is to teach. So it would not have worked out. Just in my defense.
So would it de facto mean the chair would only serve 1 year then?
That seems to be the suggestion, yes.
That's something the group might want to think about.
And right now it's 2 years?
Well, no, right now.
It's 1 year. It's always been 1 year.
It's been, I mean, Deborah did 2 years, I don't know what, Larry did 2, right?
Jody did 2, then Dave did 1, then Larry did 2, then Deborah did 2.
But part
So
of the
you
reason-
can break the cycle, sir.
Well, see, I have a trap door because this is also the end of this is my last year on this term, so I could just not run again. And you guys are stuck.
But it's almost like they barely learn the job of
Yeah.
being chair after 1 year,
Yes.
you know?
There's also supposed to be, I mean, there's the chair-elect, and then on advisory council, the immediate previous chair, past chair is supposed to be there too. So there's supposed to be a sort of 3 years cycle of connection between the three.
So I would imagine what you're proposing, going back to what it used to be, is you would still have 2 years on advisory council. So starting next year, once we elect a president and a president-elect, then that president-elect is on AC and kind of will learn what it's
actually
like.
3 years.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be on advisory council because you're supposed to be chair-elect on advisory council, then chair on advisory council, and then immediate past chair is still on advisory council.
So yeah, but at least the preparation.
Yeah.
So coming in, green,
Right.
the chair-elect position, the vice chair should be learning from the mistakes of the chair, make their own mistakes as the chair, and then tell all the mistakes to the previous 2 people after they were passed, so they can learn. I agree with that.
Well, I guess, go back again like the others, go back to your divisions and see if there's
Lori's
any.
gonna write a proposal?
Sure.
Which just be like.
So, can I, so is Deborah on advisory council?
Interesting, you should ask.
That's a
Sorry.
matter of discussion right now. Deborah had initially declined because she thought that it would be a conflict of interest to be on the board of trustees and an advisory council. I've asked around about that and there was some disagreement about it, so I once again re-invited her and she said that she's going to talk to some people and possibly. But as of right now, she did not come to the first meeting.
Is that something that we discuss as a Senate? I mean, if she's as a representative of Senate for advisory council, if we, I don't know if I'm putting foot in mouth here, but if that's our purview, or is it up to her?
Can we issue bench warrants?
I don't know.
You shall appear.
But she's no longer a senator, so I didn't know how that traditionally was either. She's no longer a senator, but she's passed, she has this past chair, and so it leaves a vacancy on the advisory council, but also she's not a senator. I don't know, bringing
The
up.
past chairs usually are still senators,
Yes.
right?
So do they typically then, if they had finished their term on Senate, as Andrew might as president, do they typically then just run again so that they can serve on advisory council in that next year?
Or they serve without being on Senate. That's
Is that, that's okay to do that?
I was waiting on that. I haven't seen anything in there.
Timing with her is when she ended up being chair as she was turning out.
Well, no, she actually had another year. She resigned.
Oh, she did?
She
Okay.
resigned because she was on the
Okay.
board.
So she actually resigned from Senate? I
Yes.
didn't realize that, I thought she turned out.
More discussion to come. All right, so this is another one. This one I think is also one that will probably need some significant discussion in your divisions. Term-by-term faculty review. In bylaw 5351, says frequency of evaluation based on appointment type. Term-by-term appointments, all faculty members on term-to-term appointments are evaluated at least once every 3 years, or at least once every 45 credits, whichever is sooner. And so this actually was a real-world experience we had in our program where this became a problem. And so without getting into any particulars about that, I've discussed with a number of people, both term-by-terms and full-time faculty, about the reasons why it might be a bad idea for someone to be able to go 45 credits of teaching without anyone ever observing their teaching at all. I think from my perspective, it's unfair to the term-by-term faculty member. And especially, I think a lot of our programs hire term-by-term students who don't have teaching experience. It might be the first time they're teaching, and there's no one there to give them feedback, and the only feedback they're getting is student evaluations initially. So I think it's unfair to students when no one knows what kind of teaching they're actually getting, other than student evaluations, which is my next item. So just curious what people think about that, about changing that bylaw to require some earlier evaluation of term-by-term faculty. I know there's some, in the advisory council, one of the things that came up was the concern that it could be a burden to chairs, but it wouldn't necessarily need to be chairs who go in, that maybe there could be peer evaluation or for peer observation, however you want to phrase it.
Or seasoned faculty member.
Or seasoned
who
faculty.
could step into the chair.
Yeah.
What would it look like if you perform an evaluation within the first term for the first time, term-by-term person? You actually try to give that feedback in their very first term there. And then we went more on this cycle after that point?
So that's 11 classes, roughly, if they're 4-credit classes. So I think before they'd have to be evaluated according to the language.
Right,
But they
but
could certainly.
you're saying, you're suggesting, like, what if we did initial one and then you had until that's basically what, in communication, we decided to adopt for our program. That's basically what we're gonna start doing. Is that either the chair, who's currently Eric Palmer, or another faculty member who is more
Seasoned.
More senior.
or aligned with that. So for instance, if it's a comm studies, Eric wouldn't be the one to do the observation. You'd have someone from comm studies do it.
Right.
But a seasoned faculty member in the first term observe and just give some feedback, and then as long as everything looks good, there wouldn't be anything until this.
Can I say one quick thing? I mean, programs can do more evaluations. It's just that you can't go beyond that point without doing it. But if your program wanted to adopt more frequency, they could certainly do that.
So your argument in a sense is we don't necessarily need to codify that here.
Oh, I don't know if that's not up to me, that would be your decision, but I just wanted folks to know that it's not like this, you can't do it until they have 45 credits or 3 years.
Right,
It's not.
Right,
Yeah.
no, I get it.
But one reason to think about, for instance, this came up again in communication, was that if it's not codified, then the implication of someone coming in, it might appear, oh, is there a problem? Why are you coming into my classroom, in this program, but it's not happening in other programs? Whereas if this is just a standard and people know coming in, and by the way, thank you for coming here. We will be observing you at some point in the term. It's just a standard piece and doesn't feel punitive or scary.
A fairly substantive argument in favor of codification.
I think this one kind of goes to the core of our promise to students. I think if students knew that we were hiring people and nobody's really observing them or anything for potentially couple of years, 3 years, or a couple of years, they would find that problematic. And that's what we brag about. We brag about having really good people in the classroom. And so for me, this is one where I would hope that the faculty would say, yeah, we really want to make sure these new colleagues are doing things the way, doing them well. And you could have, maybe some sort of an evaluation where if everything's great, then they don't have to have it done for so long. But if there's concerns, then you do it again the following year or something, trigger a more frequent. I hear periodically from students who, I hear that, I've got great professors, but I also hear, oh my God, I've got this. And I don't even know what to say to students when that kind of thing comes forward. And it's really, I'm like, well, it's not supposed to be that way, but so your help on trying to make sure, especially when you hire somebody out of industry who doesn't have teaching experience, that they And there's gonna be a lot of change going on with our, as we learn new ways of teaching and stuff, and people may have a very old idea of what teaching is, so.
So maybe if it's linked to some kind of idea of mentorship, it might be less threatening to the new faculty and more productive, because there's that desire to improve the person's teaching.
I would suggest that you just take into consideration that, and you can write the language to reflect this, that many of our programs have an adjunct will come in as a term by term, and then we won't see them again until maybe the following year. I'm looking at Mark because it happens in business. So you might do the first term evaluation, and then just have a mechanism for that person, either another one when they come back, or something that sort of, I don't know what that would look like, but we don't have people who are every single term, nor every other, or 2 or 3 terms.
I also think it's really valuable service to the adjunct instructors themselves.
Very.
The idea that you get a phone call and you say, could you come in and teach a class, and then you're on your own and you have no idea really how well you're doing, and you don't get any feedback. I don't think that's to anybody's benefit.
No, I agree 100%.
You were talking about allowing other people to do the evaluation as appropriate for programs, and if you decide to do that, will you please change that in the bylaws too? Because we get in the provost's office, we get them with different signatures, and if it's not the chairs, then it doesn't align with them.
Yeah, they have to.
But I have had other chairs that have asked for that request.
Does anyone hate this idea? Is anyone no, you should not do this at all?
Well, I'll just say we have a lot of adjuncts and not very many full-time faculty, so I think we need to do it, but it's going to be tricky to get the veteran faculty to participate in helping with something like that.
You didn't ever want to teach again anyway.
Oh, I think that's another one to take back and discuss with your programs and divisions. And I think actually pretty closely related to this, we had, I think, a really great discussion on advisory council about rethinking student evals. This has been something that's popped up a lot since I've been here in discussions with faculty. And particularly, it comes up a lot when I talk to women and faculty of color about the fact that there's just a lot of evidence to show that student evals are biased, that they aren't reliable, very good reliable information about teaching quality. And again, looking at how the fact that term by terms are not getting observed, but are getting these evals and might be penalized in certain ways by untrustworthy evals. And so I would love if our Senate, if we accomplished one big thing this year of being able to rethink about how we incorporate student feedback, make it better, look for ways to account for those biases. I think that would be a really productive and important thing, and aligns very closely with SD4 about diversity and inclusion. So I was curious what people thought about that.
I think it would be incredibly challenging to try and remove the bias. I mean, the student knows who the professor is.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the idea, but I don't know how you would do it.
I don't know, but it just seems to me this is a sort of classic standard problem for universities, right? It seems like somebody would have figured this out somewhere. Are there any best practices out there that we could?
Yeah, there are some.
So there has been some work done on this in some places, like some of the documents that I think everybody had access to.
Yeah, there's an article and a couple of different versions of evaluations that we did throw in there just for sort of consideration, and again, something that you could take to your colleagues to discuss. And there's more out there as well.
There is, and I sent you an email earlier about going into EAB, and all of you can log into EAB and by using your SOU email address, sign up and set a password. But that's a that's just a huge collective of information. We are not reinventing, or inventing, either one. Because there's so much work that's been done, and I sent this group an article, just one
They've got it
example.
too.
They got it too. So there's a lot of information out there. And so you might want to put a little group together to just start exploring some of the literature that's out there. There's a lot of literature on bias. This is not a new subject, especially in gender and race studies. So, and how that manifests in evaluations. So it might be really a good way to maybe work with somebody from SD4 group. Shanika would be a good person to look up with as a resource.
The example you sent us, I think, also emphasizes the need for the student to take responsibility for the learning. So it doesn't so much deal with bias, I felt, but really taking responsibility for some of the outcomes, and that in itself is huge. We don't have that in ours.
Right, and there was a lot in it that instead of you're evaluating this person, it's like you're reflecting on the learning experience. So that kind of shifts it away from like you're judging this person.
Ties it to the learning objectives.
Which I don't think the all-campus question does.
Oh, I think that is such an important question. I'm a 7.
I'd like to just applaud this whole discussion again. I think it's incredibly important. I don't know if any of you are following this sort of real college movement. There's a lot of folks really thinking about what are our students really like today, and how do we give them more voice in our institutions. It's kind of anyway, how we give students voice in a meaningful way is really an important topic. It's also really important that we treat our employees fairly and that we're not perpetuating the biases that are out there in our population, in our world. So I agree with Andrew, if you could take this on and come up with something. I think students need to be involved in this process. This is one that begs out for student involvement, you know, and faculty. But that could be just a wonderful contribution to their learning and to your lives.
I don't imagine this item is an exhaustive suggestion of substantive changes, but we did have a mini brouhaha about promotion and tenure criteria for improving faculty quality, or examining faculty quality last year. Is that been a discussion that we want to continue, because we sort of...
You're talking about the post-tenure review?
Yeah.
Discussion? Yeah, that was...
It's along these same lines of faculty...
The directors were supposed to bring some data to one of the early Senate meetings, and I think that's still on track. Yeah.
Okay.
They worked on it over this summer.
Good. We did discuss that at advisory council, but we didn't have that information to act on yet.
Sure.
Just to make sure that I'm clear, we're talking more about looking for different questions to ask in the evaluations to get better information, or are we thinking about rewording and rephrasing the questions we're currently asking? Like, what kind, are we really thinking, like, we want different type of information out of this, or are we just thinking, we're biasly getting info? It's kind of, I wasn't sure, but.
I think anyone, whoever might be charged to work on this, should consider that.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to see anyone kind of close themselves off to one option.
But not just reword, but like
Right.
expand what we ask.
We should definitely look at what other people are doing.
So are we also considering this more broadly in terms of the role that we want to ascribe to evaluations, the kind of work that they do for us? Because I don't know if anyone's following like what happened at Ryerson University, for example. There was arbitration at the end of August to say that whatever value we might say that student values bring, or student evaluations bring, it has to be decoupled from conversations about promotion and tenure because of the bias, for instance. So they're rethinking what we expect out of student evaluations and what they can and can't do.
Well, we actually discussed that and talked about using them more to improve our teaching as a
Yes.
whole body rather than judging
Right.
someone for that. So yes, that discussion would be a part of it.
But
All right, well, I think that's another thing to go forward and continue conversations with, and I'll bring it back and do something fun with it. All right, so we're about 10 minutes behind, and we're certainly not going to get through this this next item, I think, finished today, because I think it's a big conversation. So obviously I have a lot of big think ideas here. So again, since I've been here, I've always heard every time sort of the entire general education conversation comes up, there's like, oh yeah, we need to adjust that, we need to adapt here, we need to relook at that. But I haven't actually seen anything happen in terms of actually acting on that. And I think now with SD1, that really challenges us to transform our education. I feel like it's our responsibility as faculty to own that question. That shouldn't be dictated to us by anyone else. So I would love for us to look at the possibility of appointing a task force on this. The general education curriculum is 10 years old, about 10 years old. And I think I've been doing a little bit of reading on it, and there are some pretty exciting innovations in general education happening across the country. I think we do some things really well, but I think we should consider it. And as I said at the breakfast, I think it would be a pretty amazing thing if, for enrollment, certainly for new students, for freshmen coming in, if they looked at SUU and compared to other Oregon universities and said, wow, that's the most exciting general education program Oregon offers. I'm going to go there for those first 2 years. So I want to open that conversation about, are people interested in looking at our general education? Is it the live wire no one wants to touch, or can we dig in and take a look at it?
Do we want to change it because it's old or change it because it's broken?
Maybe not even change it, look at it and say, oh, this is awesome, maybe tweak this. I don't know.
I will say that our accreditors made note that it is much larger than other institutions that they regularly see or evaluate, at least in NWCCU. And I've heard students say, why do we have to have just one? Could there be a parallel, that's not a one-size-fits-all, that for other groups of student population or other populations of students? So a lot of ideas have been shared, and I think it's probably good to look at it because it's dated. We're in a different time now, we have different students, but there are also things that work well that we just might want to keep. That's my 2 cents.
I just had a question, when you said it's larger, meaning we make
More credits.
More credits.
More
I just want to
More
clarify
choices,
that.
more credits.
So Susan, following up, and this is probably putting you on the spot a little bit too, but in the context of better alignment with community college partners, high school credit sorts of programs, are we sticking out a little bit like a sore thumb on this relative to some of the other schools in the Northwest?
We're actually in the conversations around 2998 and, the sort of all the transfer stuff and the, accelerated learning stuff and all of those conversations that are happening right now. We fare pretty well in most ways, but there are ways in which it is clunky for students to come in. But I will say on the 2998 work group, for example, a lot of the other schools were much more cumbersome and problematic. I think it's just the student experience that we aren't asking about. When that was developed back in the day, the conversations around the student experience were different than the ones I'm hearing nationally. now and hearing students talk about. So I don't think that we're causing anybody problems in terms of getting into the institution. And I think Lee might have a better idea of that, but I think we've done some good work on pathways and some other things that we've tried to fix over the last couple of years.
And if I may, we had a 5-year review of general education that completed in university studies. It was a year ago this past spring. And at that time, we had 275 exploration and integration courses. That's a lot of courses to deliver. So there's a plethora of stuff out there, and the question is, are they the right courses?
Yeah, so it's not whether it's more choice or less, it's whether the choices are the right ones. Are all those exploration courses really the courses that students are going to benefit from? And I would argue that no.
I like the idea of it getting small. That would be easier for people to get through, I think.
I think probably the most important thing is they're not the same students. Students are changing, and especially as we start thinking more about adult students and returning students, you know, is it impossible to conceive of maybe two pathways through general education? I don't know. You know, I mean, you know what you want students to get out of it and what you believe is important, but are we making, is there a way to get students to get those things in maybe a simpler way? I don't know, and that's why the research really is critical to this, I think, looking at what some other institutions are doing. And that's just one example of a different type of student. But we have INL students, right, who get to their last couple of terms and they have to go back and take some requirement that they're, you know, and it's just a barrier. And then there's so much work around what students really need in terms of math, for example, and who that's a barrier for and who it's really important for, who it's not a barrier for. Your colleagues are talking about these kinds of things all over the country.
I think the other thing, as we bring this conversation forward, is it's not just about, oh, I can check off this box. It's about meaningful curriculum. These are very expensive things that we're asking students to do. Take 1 more class, take 3 more classes. And that the things that we're having them do, we really demonstrate how these things transfer into the world, or how it helps them maneuver through their curriculum that they need within the major. These connections of what high impact practices are, other aspects that we oftentimes utilize terms within our curriculum that we don't share with our students. You know, they don't know why they have to take this course. They just know they need to take this course because they want to check off this box because they need this strand. So please help me so I can graduate. And so to me, we could really do so much better than having so many seniors get to that point where they're missing something that really should have been completed long before their senior year. And they're trying to get over that hurdle. It's like this big 6-foot wall they can't, you know, go over.
I'm just wondering, we have a lot of certificates programs on campus, and I'm wondering if there's any statistics to compare our degree completions in certificates versus degree completions in degree programs. If we could see, like, yeah, 100% of kids that start certificate programs complete that, and only 72% of kids that start degree programs complete that.
Well, up until recently, certificates had to be attached to a major. So I'm guessing, I'm just, you know, that there's probably a correlation there between completing your major and getting that certificate completed. Now that we've uncoupled them from the major, there's an opportunity maybe to look at the certificate completion a little differently, but we can look at that, definitely. I can ask Matt about that. I just don't think we're gonna learn anything until we look at them in isolation of a major.
We've only had that for a year, or is it just now?
Just recently, yeah, it just started last spring. Yeah, we got it approved through DOE.
It just seems like there's not continuity. It seems like there's general education, where you have to go check off these boxes, and you know, we don't even advise on, we have different advisors. There needs to be a reason I'm taking this class, and for it to be linked to seeking. I mean, I look at, I teach research classes and outdoor leadership and all, and then, I sit there when those freshmen are coming in, I'm like, pay attention to your use classes. You're gonna be using these. But then they take their freshman year and I'm teaching them their senior year, and they forgot a lot of that stuff. And so there needs to be some continuity. And I understand some people do come in and they don't really know what they're gonna do for their degree, and there needs to be some exploration. But there could be a track for students that do know what they want to do. And you can start linking them together with their degree in a lot more interesting ways than what we're doing right now. And that's what we're trying to figure out in outdoor adventure leadership is, let's give them some experiences right off the bat to start writing about. And a lot of this kind of looks like house a little bit, but it'd be more integrated into your degree program. But there just doesn't seem to be a link. Like Lee was saying, there's not a connection. And it does feel like literally they're checking out boxes, and they are in degree work. It's a check. And so for a lot of it, they don't see the value of it, and there's a disconnect.
If they're picking a class, the only reason they're picking a class is if it's the schedule.
Yep, it's the schedule.
So there is a disconnect between the writing first year and senior year.
Yep.
And I will just use my own personal experience. I have a 231 class, CCJ 231, which is a University Studies Social Science checkbox. It's really hard to assign large papers in a class of 60. If it was 30, I could give a lot better feedback and have different papers, but I still assign writing in them. It's a lot more work. So if my suggestion perhaps is, I think upper division HI and J strands are capped at like 35. If it's a strand class, make it 30. I had 60. It was 80 when I started, so we're moving in the right direction. But 60 is still quite large, and I don't know if all social science courses are equal when it comes to enrollment. There's no 60, and I'm sure Psych 201 and Psych 202 are pretty high too. It's just if we expect writing, which is a fundamental, A, B, C strand, then that should continue throughout the entire curriculum that they're here. And in order to do that, then you have to have manageable, writing intensive, or classes. It's hard to do it when you have art classes like that.
Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to stop this conversation here for now. Okay. But does this sound like something that we want to pursue as a Senate and keep conversing about?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So we will talk about it again, I promise. Yes. We'll get to that point. All right. Well, any announcements or new business?
Probably new business, but really just housekeeping. One of my colleagues asked about, was there an agenda? So I just wanted to ask, did the agenda go to all faculty? Is it supposed to?
Did you all get mine?
I did.
Or senators.
Yeah, but just senators.
No, I did it all.
Okay. I'll tell
I
them,
got it
I'll
before.
tell them.
Yeah, I wasn't elected
Oh.
yet, and I got it.
Okay, I'll tell them to look in their email.
I wasn't sure because I actually, when I sent it, I didn't get it. And I was like, do I get my own all faculty? I didn't know. So I went around the hall. I was like, did you get it? Did you get it? And they said yes.
Awesome. I'll tell them to check again.
It went on September 25th, all faculty.
Okay, that's good. And I know this is onerous and it's a task. When I take things back to my faculty, I try to take good notes, all this good stuff, but I also like to be able to tell them, go check out the minutes, and that's only if the minutes get published within a week or less for them to be able to go do that. I know that's a time crunch. So my request is, can we have the minutes as soon as possible? And maybe that will be the Thursday before our next meeting, as soon as possible. Or maybe it's this Friday, don't know. I understand time crunch.
Friday might be hard, but I think a week in advance is reasonable. I could try for that goal.
It can be a goal.
The video will be available for that.
Oh,
You can always send them to that.
brilliant, yes.
Which is more detailed anyway.
Yeah.
No, it is. That's
It totally
why we
is.
started doing it.
Yeah.
So Chad, you'll be uploading the video, right? So just let me know as soon as it's ready, and I'll send it all out there. Right?
Fabulous.
Any other announcements?
I'd like to talk about what the Outdoor Adventure Leadership Program did this summer. We had 2 simultaneous international expeditions going on, which is the first time we ever did that. A master's degree program computer expedition that they were required to do. And we bike packed, which is different than bicycle touring. It's on mountain bikes and it's very lightweight. And you just strap bags to your handlebars, you got a seat bag, and you got a little backpack. We bike packed 32 days from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea, over 965 miles, gaining 67,000 vertical feet. So quite an accomplishment, and they all made it as a group. And so it's pretty awesome. We're going to be doing a big reflection piece on that and doing a slideshow presentation as part of their degree, and I'll invite you all to that.
How many students?
So we had 6, and this year we have a full cohort of 13 students, and they're in the middle of transitioning from one cohort to the next. And at the same time, we had 18 students over in the Himalayas. So 2 of the major mountain ranges of the world, and pretty exciting to be texting your colleagues while, some of them are at Mukta in the Himalayas, and we're sitting at another beautiful place in the Caucasus. But, this was the culmination of lots of innovation in curriculum. And I was just reflecting, sitting there in the Caspian Sea, that, there was a lot that went into getting those students there. From changing the way financial aid dispersed money, to the definition of what you get a credit for. And it wasn't just us sitting on that shore, it was an entire institution behind us that was allowing us to make innovative changes. And I just want to applaud our administration, and they're allowing us to do amazing things with our students. And people are hearing about these things, and they're coming to our school for that. I had a difficult choice is picking out students that wanted to come. But it is because of our education that the experiences that we're giving our students. And then we got to tell our story. We got to get it out there and let people know what we're doing. But just a fun little tidbit of information for you.
Anything else?
Good job.